Somebody responded to our Reddit post. I just like to look at that and see what they had to say here. You can ask ChatGPT to be a dungeon master and play single player D&D or Shadowrun or whatever. Or you can DM if you want. I have experimented with this a bit, but I really enjoy learning about all the different characters in the world, not just the one I am playing. It is crazy how far down the rabbit hole you can go. And how creative the AI can become. So what we're about to do is something I've done a couple of times with the AI, and it's really just for fun. It's not going to create a terribly coherent story. It's not um, it's not necessarily even world building a single world. There's not a ton of structure to it, but ChatGPT will build stories for everything, right? If you ask it to create a city or ask it to create a character or give it some guidelines about a character, and then tell it to tell you stories about things that character has done, even if you've just made those things up, right? Just off the top of your head, tell me about the time that X character put down a goblin rebellion, or tell me about the time X character brokered a peace treaty between humans and dwarves, or tell me about the time whatever it is. And then you have this character that's been built, and you have the personality traits of that character, and so that gets infused into your story, and you really get to experience this new part of the world that the AI is building with you from the perspective of that character. And it's like unfolding a book of short stories and just reading through random short stories about all of these different characters from different time periods, different worlds, different whatever it is. It's just a lot of fun. And today I'm going to try something that I worked a little bit with last stream, which is to get an art AI, which this time we're going to use BlueWillow. We're going to get an art AI to draw some pictures of some of the stories we create. We're going to try and do that in sort of a comic book style and see if we can't create images that tell the same story and maybe nail down a little bit how that image-based language might go. So we're just going to start a new chat here, and I've already developed the prompt that I want to use when creating some of this world. We are going to use a prompt to create a city for us. And then from that, we're just going to branch some things off and learn about whatever this city happens to be. So let's put that down there. Whoops, not delete. Go up, and then we're just going to say create. Let's create a fantasy. Let's do dwarves. Dwarven city with the following structure. All right. Then it's just going to print it out for us. Not a whole lot of difficulty in getting it done. This is going to use, we've talked a lot in the past about about the default way that the AI understands certain things. So, for example, the AI has a default understanding of what a dwarf is and what a dwarven city is, and it's based off of existing literature, um, and existing mythologies and stuff like that within that literature. And so when we ask it to create a dwarven city, it's going to use that default context. Now we can change that context in any way that we might want, right? We could edit this post and say, our dwarves don't live underground, they live above ground. And it would totally change the context with which it built this city. For now, we're going to stick with the defaults because it's just faster, and I'd really like to get some stories in. I love reading personally, um, but sometimes I don't necessarily want to read a whole book, right? Sometimes it's just interesting to read a little history about something, or to read, just one page worth of really interesting story. And this is a great way to do that in an exploratory manner, because you don't know anything about the world that the AI is going to create until you get the AI to start creating it. And it's just really, really fun to go through and have it do things multiple times, right? We don't even necessarily have to use this city. We could just say, forget it. We don't want to use this one. This is too big of a city, or this isn't the right kind of city, or maybe we don't necessarily like these deities that it gave us, or whatever. And we can just do it again. And you can just keep building and keep building and keep changing until you get what you want. And then you read a little story about it. So the name of our city is going to be Ironhold. The king is King Thrain Stonefist. It's a large city of about 20,000 dwarves. Important clans, we have the Stonefist clan, which King Thrain is a member of, the Ironforge clan, and the Thunderbeard clan. Important organizations is the Iron Council, which I would assume is made of these three clans here. The Guild of Smiths and Miners. Worship deities are Moradin, god of dwarves, Clangadin, Silverbeard, god of battle. Notable businesses would be the Ironforge Arms and Armor, and the Deep Delve. I don't know. I don't remember who the name of the king in that was, but maybe next time I'll ask it not to use names um, from popular literature. Hey, what's up, J42? I see you're back. I think next time we'll ask it to use names that aren't from popular literature, just because I like to keep things a little interesting. So let's. I think I have a loadout. Yes, I do. To create. Control V. All right. So create the character of. Where's Mr. Thunderbeard at? Durin Thunderbeard. We don't need that in there. We don't need this in here. Okay. Let's see what it has to say about Mr. Durin Thunderbeard here. Right, he's a dwarf. He's 150 years old and lawful good. Occupation is blacksmith and clan leader. Now this is really great. I love how the AI carries over context. Aww. Please no. I want to learn about Durin Thunderbeard. You can do it. I believe in you, ChatGPT. Tell me my story. All right. Oh, he's 350 this time. Still lawful good, though. He's a master blacksmith and the clan leader of the Thunderbeard clan. Organization affiliation, so he is on the Iron Council and he is part of the Guild of Smiths and Miners. Wow, super powerful guy. Personality, core traits, he's loyal, honorable, strong-willed, industrious. Backstory, Durin was born into the Thunderbeard clan, one of the most prominent and respected clans in Ironhold. From a young age, he showed a natural talent for working with metal and was apprenticed to the clan's master blacksmith. He quickly rose through the ranks and eventually took over as the clan's leader and master blacksmith. Values and beliefs, Durin values honor, loyalty, and hard work. He believes in the importance of tradition and the strength of community. He holds the dwarves' gods Moradin and Clangadin, Silverbeard, in high reverence. Unique voice, Durin speaks with a deep, booming voice and has a habit of punctuating his sentences with a hearty laugh. That's great. Goals and motivations. Durin's main goal is to uphold the honor and reputation of the Thunderbeard clan and to continue to make it one of the most respected and powerful clans in Ironhold. His motivation is his love for his clan and his desire to do what is best for them. Contradictions. Despite his strong sense of tradition and respect for the past, Durin is also a forward thinker, always on the lookout for new and better ways to improve the clan's operations and reputation. Physical appearance, Durin is a sturdy, broad-shouldered dwarf with a thick, bushy beard that is streaked with white. He has sharp, angular features and piercing blue eyes. He wears a leather apron over his clothes, as is typical of a blacksmith. His clothes are made of rough spun and adorned with intricate embroidery. His accessories include a thick gold chain necklace with a medallion of Moradin and a belt with a large ornate belt buckle. He carries a large double-bladed axe, which is his weapon of choice. And then major accomplishments, and this is really the fun thing here, is that when you get it to tell you about major accomplishments, right, it's just making these up, but now I can just get it to tell me a story about these accomplishments. So Durin is known for having developed a new technique for creating high-quality steel weapons, which has made the Thunderbeard clan's arms and armor highly sought after by warriors and adventurers. He also led the construction of the clan Grand Hall and Forge, which is now considered one of the finest in Ironhold. Gotta get a little water there. So, now, in our effort to just discover this world, we have a couple of options here. We have a description right here. We could absolutely go and make this character using BlueWillow right now, and I'm actually going to, because I think that's a really fun idea. So you won't be able to see me go into the Discord because it's not part of what shows on my screen, but I'm going to punch that in and let it do its thing. And here in just a little bit, it'll tell me that it's done. And then I'll just open it in my web browser and show you guys what these different AIs think of Durin Thunderbeard. While we're waiting on that, I'd like to get a story about Durin Thunderbeard. Right, I want to read something about him. He seems like an interesting fella. And his major accomplishments that it brought up, I don't know, they're kind of interesting. Actually, let's learn about this new technique. Create a one-page story about the development of the new steel making technique. And Durin has appeared. Okay. It's going to take some time to tell us our little story, so in the meantime, we're going to take a look at what Durin looks like. So these are the examples that BlueWillow gave us. Just based off of that physical description, we punched it in, bammo, this is what we got. These two, I think, meet that physical description the best, mostly because the other ones just don't seem to have a medallion. But let's take a look at that physical description. A sturdy, broad-shouldered dwarf with thick, bushy beard that is streaked with white. None of these really streaked with white. He has sharp, angular features and piercing blue eyes. He wears a leather apron over his clothes, as is typical of a blacksmith. His clothes are made of rough spun and adorned with intricate embroidery. His accessories include a thick gold chain necklace with a medallion of Moradin and a belt with a large ornate belt buckle. He carries a large double-bladed axe, which is his weapon of choice. So we see in this one he's got something strapped on his back that would probably be the axe haft, right? We've got his belt here. He's not wearing an apron, but we do have some real rough spun clothing that is, I mean, I wouldn't say super intricately adorned, but is somewhat intricately adorned. We can't really see his eyes. I think this is the only one where his eyes really show. But it's taken that blue and sort of expressed it throughout the rest of the image, right? He's got blue clothes on and some other stuff. I really like this BlueWillow. It's a Discord system just like Midjourney, except right now it's permanently free. It's not just going to give you the 25. Definitely, I think Midjourney does a slightly better job as far as overall quality. But I'm actually really happy with the way this BlueWillow looks. It's multiple AIs that were it's multiple AI models, and what it does is selects based on your prompt what it thinks the best AI model to use is going to be to create the image, and then it creates the image based off of that model. So this is what it would say is what Durin looks like for us. Now we didn't get our explanation, so we're going to try and submit this again. Again, whenever you're playing with ChatGPT, if you are using it during a time when it's got high capacity, when there's lots of people using it, you're going to get some bugs. You're going to get pages not loading. You're going to get it telling you, it wasn't able to finish whatever task. You're going to get it telling you all kinds of different stuff. Just be patient with it. Hit the refresh button. Try your prompt again. You're just going to have to be a little more patient during high use times. So Durin Thunderbeard, master blacksmith and leader of the Thunderbeard clan, had always been driven to create the finest weapons and armor for his people. He had spent centuries honing his craft and experimenting with different techniques and materials, but despite his best efforts, he could never quite achieve the level of quality he desired. One day, as he was working in his forge, an idea came to him. He remembered a legend passed down through the clan of an ancient dwarven king who had discovered a secret method of making steel that was stronger and more durable than any other. Durin knew that if he could uncover the secret of this technique, it could revolutionize the way his clan and all of Ironhold crafted weapons and armor. He spent the next several years researching the legend and experimenting with different methods. He tried every combination of ore and smelting techniques he could think of, but nothing seemed to work. He was on the verge of giving up when a chance discovery led him to the key ingredient he had been missing all along, a rare mineral found deep within the mines of Ironhold. With this new mineral in hand, Durin set to work creating a new technique for making steel. He worked tirelessly day and night in his forge, never giving up despite the many setbacks and failures he encountered. But finally, after months of experimentation, he succeeded. He had created a new type of steel that was stronger, more durable, and more resistant to wear and tear than any other. The success of his new technique led to a great increase in the reputation of the Thunderbeard clan, and their weapons and armor became highly sought after by warriors and adventurers from all over. Durin's achievement was celebrated throughout Ironhold, and his name was remembered for centuries to come. The new technique not only revolutionized the clan's operations, but also the whole of Ironhold, making them the leader in the steelmaking industry. I think actually the mineral that they're trying to say he discovered was likely the mithril vein that they alluded to there being inside of historical moments was the discovery of the legendary vein of mithril ore deep within the mines of Ironhold. So I imagine that's the rare ore it's alluding to. It didn't come right out and say it, and I'm actually kind of surprised, especially since it had already expressly told us that there was this mithril ore there. But now, because we sort of have this baseline, right, we can go through and we can learn all kinds of stuff about Ironhold. Right, we're talking about one character from one point in time in history of this city. And it's only one city in what could be an entire world of different cities or an entire universe. The individual that I've talked about in the past, gosh darn it, I keep forgetting his name. Curiosity's Edge, who does the Nova magazine. He's doing an entire universe, is the Novaverse, and when he does his little interviews with different random characters from different random planets, he just creates whole interviews of just all kinds of different people and doing different jobs. Right, one was a bartender. He does an interview about a specialty jewelry store. He does an interview with a chef that created their own restaurant in this other planet. It's really interesting, and I really hope he keeps doing it because the magazine was, I mean, the quality of the images was incredible, but also you could see the effort he was putting into his prompts and why he was getting such better images and such better story from that. You spend a little bit of time with the AI and you talk to it a little before you get it to start spitting things out, and the quality of what you get out is apparent in the quality of what you put in. So let's change it up a little bit. That story about Durin was kind of interesting, but let's have it create a character. Create a great dwarven warrior. His name, his race will be in there, alignment, occupation, affiliations. Okay, so we don't have anything specific. Great. So we'll save and submit that, and it's going to give us another dwarf. Now we have Grimgor Iron Fist, who's age 150, lawful good, warrior, member of the Iron Fist clan. I love that it continues to give us members of these clans that it already said was important, right? Oh, hold on. The Iron Fist clan was not one of. We have Iron Forge. We do not have Iron Fist. But it says that he's on the Iron Council and the Guild of Smiths and Miners. It keeps giving us all of these options, and I'm sure there is a way to stop that. Probably giving it more options would stop that. It does like a lot of us probably did when we were younger and creating worlds, where we set in our minds a number of things that everything is going to be associated with, right? So we would say, okay, every person is going to have 2 organizational affiliations, but then we don't create enough organizations, and so then we just have all of this replicated stuff, and everybody is part of all of the same organizations. and it gets a little redundant, and the AI is very much guilty of that as well. But let's go through and learn a little bit more about Grimgor Iron Fist. Core traits: he's loyal, honorable, disciplined, and proud. His backstory is Grimgor grew up in Ironhold, the son of a blacksmith in the Iron Fist clan. He was trained in the art of combat from a young age and always had a deep sense of pride in his clan and his heritage. He values honor above all else and will always stand up for what he believes is right, even if it means going against his clan or his king. Values and beliefs: duty, loyalty, and honor are the most important things to Grimgor. He believes that the strong should protect the weak, and that those in power should use it responsibly. He also has a deep reverence for the ancient traditions and customs of his people. Unique voice: Grimgor speaks in a deep, gruff voice and has a habit of using old dwarven proverbs and sayings. He is also known for his hearty laughter and his love of good ale. Goals and motivations: Grimgor's ultimate goal is to become a member of the Iron Council and to defend Ironhold and its people from all threats. He is motivated by his sense of duty and his desire to make a difference in the world. Contradictions: despite his fierce loyalty and sense of duty, Grimgor can be stubborn and sometimes refuses to listen to reason, particularly when it comes to clan politics. Physical appearance: Grimgor stands about 4'2" and is heavily muscled from years of training in battle. He has a thick black beard that he braids with gold and silver rings. He has a scar above his left eyebrow and a missing finger on his left hand. He wears a suit of enchanted dwarven plate armor and carries a massive warhammer with him at all times. He also often carries a satchel of tools and trinkets, which he uses for blacksmithing and tinkering. Major accomplishments: Grimgor was instrumental in the defense of Ironhold during the Goblin invasion of 10 years ago, in which he personally defeated the Goblin warlord leading the attack. He is also a skilled blacksmith and has created several powerful magical weapons for the use of the Iron Council and the clan. Speech style: Grimgor speaks in a deep, gruff voice and often punctuates his sentences with old dwarven proverbs and sayings. He speaks slowly and deliberately, choosing his words carefully. When he speaks, people tend to listen because they know he has something important to say. Alright, so I want to hear, tell me the story of the battle between Grimgor and the Goblin warlord. This should be something that's kind of interesting to try and put into an image. So I'm interested to see how well ChatGPT will be able to give us a prompt to try and show that battle through a series of images, like we were trying to do yesterday with the story about, or not yesterday, 2 days ago, with the story about the private investigator. So the Goblin invasion of Ironhold was a dark time for the dwarves. The Goblin hordes, led by their ruthless warlord, had been raiding the surrounding villages and towns, leaving a trail of destruction in their wake. The Iron Council knew that they had to act fast to protect their home and their people. They called upon their best warriors, including Grimgor Iron Fist, to lead the defense of Ironhold. Grimgor, being a fierce warrior and a member of the Iron Fist clan, was more than ready to take on the challenge. He rallied the other warriors, and together they set out to meet the Goblin horde head-on. The battle was fierce, with the dwarves fighting for their lives against the relentless goblin attackers. Grimgor fought with all of his might, his enchanted warhammer crushing skulls and breaking bones with every swing. But despite their best efforts, the dwarves were outnumbered and outmatched. It seemed as though the goblins would overrun Ironhold and destroy everything the dwarves had built. But Grimgor, driven by his sense of duty and his love for his people, refused to give up. He rallied the other warriors and led the counterattack against the goblin warlord's personal guard. The goblins, taken by surprise, were quickly overwhelmed and forced to retreat. In the chaos of the battle, Grimgor found himself face to face with the goblin warlord. The goblin was a formidable foe, wielding a massive battle axe and protected by a suit of crude but effective armor. But Grimgor, fueled by his rage and his desire to protect his home, fought with all his might. The battle was intense, with both warriors trading blows and taunts, but in the end it was Grimgor who emerged victorious, crushing the goblin warlord's skull with his enchanted warhammer. With the warlord defeated, the goblin horde quickly fell into disarray and was easily routed by the dwarves. The invasion was over, and Ironhold had been saved. Grimgor emerged from the battle as a hero, hailed by the dwarves for his bravery and leadership. His name would go down in history as one of Ironhold's greatest warriors, and his deeds would be remembered for generations to come. I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of the combat in the story, which is why I tried to phrase it in the way I did. But it took it upon itself to sort of tell us the entire story of the invasion, although a very abridged version. So I'm going to use this right here, and this is the part of the story that I want to try and get created into something. So we're going to create a new chat, and we're going to use sorry about that. We're going to use what we learned 2 days ago, and we're going to say we're going to tell it to pretend you are a comic book artist and provide me with prompts for an image AI for a series of panels to express what is in quotes. Nope, not quits. Quotes. Alright, we're going to put that down. Going to punch that in there. Bammo. Grimgore charging forward. Okay. Then we're going to take this series of prompts that it's going to give us, and we're going to see if we can't generate a coherent visual story. Well, alright, first prompt goes in. I wonder if... So we've discovered over our time using ChatGPT that because of its default understanding of... Because of the way it sort of has a default understanding of certain... That's interesting. Of certain topics, then you get... When you get the AI to name things based on the context that you've given it, it puts a lot of subcontext into those proper nouns. And so I was curious to see if it was going to do the same here. And it looks like the context is significantly different. I'm going to open this up in the browser so I can show you guys. Just based off of the name Grimgore, right? Without any additional context, like he's a dwarf. This is what we ended up getting. And this doesn't look like Grimgore at all. This looks like an orc, like a really, really jacked up mutant orc. This one in the top left is okay, but it's really not what we were looking for. I'm going to keep going with the prompts, just because why not? I'm interested to see what else this might make. And I think, again, we need to modify some of what we're trying to say here. Like, we don't want to use names. We want it to describe everyone. This is very much like trying to get the AI to do that old grade school project that you did where you tried to describe how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And, you wanted to describe step for step how you make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And then somebody actually tried to make the peanut butter and jelly sandwich using the instructions you gave. And they end up with like a slice of bread that has peanut butter and jelly on it and another slice of bread that's just sitting over next to it. And then you like fold the piece of bread that doesn't have the peanut butter and jelly in half because the instructions weren't specific enough. And so you end up with just this really deformed and funky peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And that's very much what's happening here is the the ChatGPT AI has its default understanding of what these characters are, right? Grimgore to the ChatGPT AI, even though we're in a different chat and it doesn't know who Grimgore is, it still has that same default context, and so it will tell us that Grimgore is a dwarf. And so when it says Grimgore is charging towards the Goblin Warlord, then it believes that Grimgore is a dwarf. But the same context is not held by the image generation AI. So when it uses the word Grimgore, we end up with this image, which is just not a dwarf, like at all. So there's some work to be done there to get it not to use names. Unless you were to train it, and that's ultimately what you would want to do, right? Is have it trained off of the same data, so it has that same subcontext. And now we are going to imagine a new image. I'm going to bring up a prompt here. And now, so the same thing is going to happen again, though, in that we are not going to have the context. So ChatGPT maintains context of all of the prompts, but BlueWillow is not going to maintain context of all of the prompts that we've given it. So it's not going to give us the same images like ChatGPT is giving us the same concepts. So yeah, here, actually this is much more like what I would have been looking for. I'll open this up in the browser too. The second prompt is the Goblin Warlord brandishing his massive battle axe, a fierce look in his eyes. So this is what it thinks a Goblin Warlord looks like. And this is why these are more orcish. I guess this one is kind of a goblin down in the bottom right. It's interesting that it didn't choose to make all of the goblins green. That's an interesting context for the image AI to have. Even this one, right, all he has is a green face. His arms are still tan. And then we even have a totally dark-skinned goblin. And none of them are really wielding battle axes, which is weird because it explicitly said wielding a battle axe. I think this is probably the most goblin-like one. It does say Goblin Warlord, which may have provided the different level of context that ultimately made it not just make it a typical small green-skinned goblin. So that's interesting. So now we've got two different characters, right? And these two different characters are facing off with each other, brandishing weapons. So this is very obviously a fight. And again, because we're not carrying context over, this is going to be interesting, because now we get to see Grimgore and the Goblin Warlord should both be here together. And we're using the name Grimgore again, which is not something I've done with an image AI yet. So now we get to see if it does the same thing that that ChatGPT does, and that is, does it have a default context for proper nouns? And so will it provide us with the same visual concept for that name Grimgore, which will be really, really interesting to see. And will it provide us with this? I mean, because all of these images for Grimgore look pretty close to the same, right? It's a hulking figure. It's got this deformed, toothy face, extremely stocky, extremely built, very animalistic. All of these images are extremely similar. We've gotten our image, so let's go back to it. And let's see. It definitely does not maintain that same context. Unless it's saying that this is the Goblin Warlord on the right here, and this is Grimgor. Because this does look similar to that Grimgor, and this looks similar to that Grimgor, and this looks similar to that Grimgor. We don't really have a Grimgor in this one. I assume this is the Goblin Warlord, although I guess it could be Grimgor. Uh, of the prompts, I like this one the most, simply because it's showing two figures coming into combat together. It's really not very good though. I'm fairly disappointed with the AI's ability to express conflict. But again, it doesn't have the context of previous prompts. It doesn't have the same default context, right? It doesn't know that one of the characters is supposed to be a dwarf. We probably could have changed that a little. Goblin Warlord's crude armor providing little defense against Grimgor's relentless attacks. And Grimgor finally overpowering the Goblin Warlord, his home and people safe from harm. So I really don't like these last two. All of these are not as good as prompts that we were getting yesterday. This was definitely inferior to what we've seen in the past. Something else that we're noticing here is that we're getting some duplication of personality traits. Right, we're getting a lot of honor and duty and loyalty, and that seems to be a recurring theme. And again, that's because of the default context of dwarves to the ChatGPT AI. That's just how it sees dwarves, is they are these duty-bound, honor-bound, loyal, clan-based individuals. And so it's going to constantly be providing you with that under its context, but you can extremely easily get it to break out of that. And the way we would do that with the prompt that we have set up is we have a spot for core traits, right? And so we can just put in here, we can just say use the core traits of thievery and mischief. And these are more goblin traits, at least in the default context of the AI, right? It thinks that all goblins are thieves and constantly getting into mischief. And so every time you make a goblin with just the default characteristics, it constantly spits that out to you. But let's use that for a dwarf. And we're not going to say a dwarven warrior, we're just going to say create a dwarf. And let's see what it uses, or what it does, when using thievery and mischief as core traits. And again, that's why I like to put, right, we use this formatting system to decide how we're going to create these characters. And it's because it gives us a lot of opportunity to do little things like this, right? To manipulate even a single thing about that. For example, you could have put his occupation as an herbalist or a monk of one of the gods or a smith, or it doesn't matter, anything. And it's going to use the context of that thing that you've already provided, and it's going to incorporate that into the rest of what it creates. So here we have name is Gritnack or Grit Iron Thief. His name is, or his race is dwarf. He's age 87 and he is chaotic neutral. Again, getting out of that lawful good and moving into an alignment that previously we hadn't really been using because the default context is so driven by that honor, duty, loyalty concept. Lollipop Guild member? Does he say that he's a Lollipop Guild member? Or are you saying that we should add him as a Lollipop? The next one, I will totally make them a member of the Lollipop Guild, and we will see what comes out. That sounds like a wonderful idea. All right. So for personality, we have core traits. Gritnack is a master of thievery and mischief with a quick wit and a silver tongue. He is always looking for the next big score, and is not above bending the rules to achieve his goals. I got a little ahead of myself. So he's a master thief and adventurer. Again, these are two things that we had not yet seen because we're breaking out of some of the context that we had previously given it, right? We've got these important clans, important organizations. Because we've provided this context, the AI was trying to fit everything into that context. Now that we've broken out of that context, it's getting a lot more creative and building us a much more interesting character. Backstory, Gritnack grew up in the slums of Ironhold, where he quickly learned the art of thievery to survive. He quickly became one of the most skilled thieves in the cities, and soon began to take on bigger and more daring heists. He eventually left Ironhold to seek greater challenges and wealth as a freelance criminal. Values and beliefs. Gritnack values personal freedom above all else and will not let anyone or anything stand in the way of his goals. He has a strong sense of loyalty to those he considers friends, but will not hesitate to betray anyone else for personal gain. Unique voice. Gritnack has a distinctive gravelly voice that he often uses to charm or intimidate those around him. He's also known for his clever and sometimes sarcastic wit. Goals and motivations. So here again, because we've broken out of the context a little bit, we've also broken out of even in our unique voices. The last two both used the terminology punctuate their sentences with, and one of them was with a laugh, and the other one was with punctuate their sentences with proverbs. So we've broken out of that again, and now we have this clever, sometimes sarcastic wit, and we've broken away from that punctuation concept. Goals and motivations. Gritnack's ultimate goal is to amass a fortune that will allow him to retire in luxury. He's driven by a desire for wealth and adventure, and will take on any job that will bring him closer to his goal. Contradictions. Despite his thieving ways, Gritnack has a strong sense of honor and will not steal from the poor or innocent. He also has a soft spot for children and animals, and will often go out of his way to help them in some way. Physical appearance. Gritnack is a short and sturdy dwarf with a thick beard and wild curly hair. His skin is weathered and scarred from years of adventuring and thieving. He's always impeccably dressed in fine clothing and jewelry, often adorned with gold and precious gems. He carries a small arsenal of weapons and tools on his person, including a set of lockpicks and a short sword. So far, I think the best image that we've gotten has been of a character. And I really liked that first image that we got of Grimgor. Or was it? No, it wasn't Grimgor. It was... Nope, I already forgot his name. See, and this is the fun of this for me, right? Is we're cranking through characters, we're learning, we're reading new story, and these characters, they just come and they go, and they're very ethereal, and we get to learn about them, and then they don't even matter anymore. And I really, really enjoy that. Imagine. All right. So we're going to put in our prompt for Gritnack, and in a moment we will have an image for him. Major accomplishments. Gritnack is known as one of the most skilled and successful thieves of his times, with a long list of daring heists and escapes under his belt. He's robbed some of the wealthiest and most powerful people in the land, and has never been caught or brought to justice. Speech style. Gritnack is a smooth talker and often uses his silver tongue to charge or deceive those around him. He speaks in a low, gravelly voice and often there it is again, punctuates his speech with a sly grin or a chuckle. He's also known for his clever and sometimes sarcastic wit, which he uses to diffuse tense situations or mock his opponents. So there's another thing that we would want to get the AI out of the habit of saying is punctuates his speech. Right? We wouldn't want every single character in our story to be doing that. And it's relatively easy to do if you're creating a series of characters, or if you recognize a repetitive action like this, you can just tell it to stop being repetitive with it, and it will. And you can keep that, like we talked about a few days ago, I guess it's been 3 or 4 days now. You don't need to apply all of the context. You only need to apply context that is going to be different from the default context that the AI already understands. Right? So the AI already understands that dwarves are um, underground dwelling, that they're extremely loyal and duty bound and value honor above all else, and they're relatively short, and they all have beards, and they all have long hair. Right? This is context that the AI already understands. So you only need to provide it with context when you want it to do something outside of that. Like you want it to also make bald dwarves, or you want it to also make dwarves that live on the surface because there are two types of dwarves in your world and some of them live in the surface. Or because you want, you don't want it to constantly say that people are punctuating their speech, right? And that's something you can just put in your character creation. Don't always say that they punctuate their speech in some way. And it'll just do that. It'll come up with new adjectives, adverbs, different things that it can use to creatively describe what you're looking for. So if you recognize a pattern like that and you don't want it to keep happening, just tell it to stop, and it totally will. Let's see. We should have our image of Gritnack now. Scrolly, scrolly, scrolly. There are so many people that use these image generation AIs that sometimes, if you're not paying close attention, there we are. I don't really like that it seems to keep cutting off people's faces. That's not cool. But here are some examples of what Gritnack could be. I like that I feel like all of these are very different than the last one, even though they're both dwarves. So you see sort of this stylistic similarity because the way the AI described the character still had similarities in their styles. You definitely see that they are two different looking characters. I would have liked to have seen some more faces, but whatever. And I think that since Gritnack is a thief and he's done all of these wonderful heists, I would like a heist story. But let's not keep it to the Ironhold. Let's have it generate an entirely new place for us. And he can steal from an entirely new race. So let's say, tell me a story of Gritnack's greatest heist of an elf. Greatest heist from an elf. From an elf. Because why not, right? Once upon a time, there was an elf named Elwyn. So this is another, I forgot to tell it not to use common characters. And now we have an elf named Elwyn, who was a member of a powerful and wealthy elven family. The family owned an ancient and valuable artifact, a necklace said to have been crafted by the god of magic himself and passed down through the generations. The necklace was said to have the power to grant immense magical powers to whoever possessed it. The power to grant immense magical powers. Gritnack, the infamous dwarf thief, had heard of the necklace and set his sights on it as his next target. He spent months planning and gathering information, using all his skills and resources to learn everything he could about the necklace and the family who owned it. Finally, the day of the heist arrived. Gritnack and his team of thieves infiltrated the elven family's palace, using their cunning and stealth to avoid detection. They made their way to the room where the necklace was kept, and Gritnack himself took on the task of stealing it. Elwyn, who was on guard duty that night, recalls how Gritnack managed to disarm the magical traps and security measures that protected the necklace with ease, as if they were child's play to him. It was clear to Elwyn that Gritnack was not just an ordinary thief, but a master of his craft. Gritnack then proceeded to steal the necklace and made his escape with his team, leaving the elves scrambling to figure out how he had managed to pull off such a daring heist. Word of Gritnack's success quickly spread through the land, and he became even more famous and respected among the criminal underworld. The elven family, however, was left deeply humiliated and vowed to reclaim the necklace and bring Gritnack to justice. But Gritnack, true to his chaotic nature, disappeared into the shadows, enjoying his newfound wealth and fame and leaving the elven family to ponder over the fact that they were outsmarted by a dwarf. This heist is still remembered as one of Gritnack's greatest accomplishments, and it solidified his reputation as one of the greatest thieves of all time. So here's another opportunity that we have to express a little more detail. It's given us this very broad outline of how this heist has gone, and it's done this with all of our prompts so far. Every story we get it to tell, it gives us some very, very broad strokes. And I want to break out of that a little bit, and I would like to learn a little more about the traps and security measures. So we're just going to have it. Tell me more about how Gritnack disarmed the traps on the necklace. And let's see what it gives us. Gritnack's expertise in disarming traps was one of the key factors in the success of the heist. He had spent months studying the elven family's palace and learning everything he could about the necklace and the traps that protected it. He knew that the necklace was protected by a variety of magical traps, including spell-warding runes, enchanted alarms, and illusions. He spent weeks studying the ancient elven texts and researching the spells and enchantments used to create the traps. On the night of the heist, Gritnack approached the room where the necklace was kept with a set of specialized tools and equipment, including a set of enchanted lockpicks, a potion that would allow him to see through illusions, and a small enchanted hammer that he used to carefully disarm the spell-warding runes. He began by carefully studying the runes and enchantments on the door, using his tools and expertise to carefully remove them without triggering any alarms. He then used his potion to see through the illusions that hid the door and entered the room. Once inside, he faced the challenge of disarming the traps that protected the necklace itself. He studied the necklace, looking for any signs of traps or enchantments. He used a combination of his tools and knowledge to carefully disarm each trap one by one until he finally got his hands on the necklace. His expertise in trap disarming was impressive and allowed him to take the necklace without triggering any alarms or drawing attention to himself, making his escape clean and easy. Gritnack's experience and skill in trap disarming were unparalleled, which made him one of the most sought-after thieves in the criminal underworld. Many thieves and bandits would seek his counsel on how to disarm traps and break into fortified places. And that's, again, just every time you're learning something about your world or doing any world building or writing anything, right? If this was an essay that you were writing for school and it gave you a series of paragraphs about whatever topic you were writing for, and you wanted to get a better paragraph, right? Select the piece that you want to improve upon and then just have it do so. Because it has the additional context of what was already written, you're going to get more quality out of it each time you go down the line. Something that was said in here a bunch of times was examined. He examined, he examined, he examined. But you could just tell it to rewrite it without using the word examined so many times, and it absolutely would. And you would end up with a better constructed story. This is still extremely interesting to me, and because of how quickly you can get new stories and how quickly you can move through your world and how quickly you get to explore all of that, I'm totally fine with a C- average quality in the writing. Right? This is if you were in high school and you were in a creative writing class and you turned this in for an assignment, you're probably going to get a C. But I personally would probably not write anything better than this. And so I get this opportunity to explore this world that exists. Again, it's extremely ethereal and it exists only right now and only while this chat is active. And then when I get rid of it, it's gone. And it's this completely unique experience of all of these completely unique events that I get to guide, and I get to decide what some of the history is, and then I get to go and experience it in this nice, quick little brief experiment, and then poof, it's gone. And it's just an incredible amount of fun, and something I really, really have enjoyed doing with ChatGPT. So now, let's go see about getting a Lollipop Guild member. I'm really excited about this. Create a dwarf. Organizational affiliations is the Lollipop Guild. And we are not going to use mischief and thievery again. And I'm interested. I'm interested to see how else it goes about this. So we got Grit Stonefist. He's a dwarf. He's age 218. A lot of times the AI sticks with numbers that end in fives and zeros. And so I'm always interested when it gives me somebody outside of that. Alignment is lawful good. Master Smith and leader of the Stonefist clan. Affiliations: the Iron Council, the Guild of Smiths and Miners. Oh, it didn't use the Lollipop Guild at all. Well, this is just wrong. We're doing it again. Use the organization, the Lollipop Guild. You will do what I say. Grommy Iron Fist. No! Hey, there he goes. The Lollipop Guild. This is exciting. They need to... Oh, because I guess the stop generating button is sort of like a slap on the hand, right? Whenever it's doing something wrong, you just smack it on the hand and tell it to do it again. Alright, name is Grommy Iron Fist of the Dwarven race, age 250. Alignment is lawful good. Occupation is Master Blacksmith and member of the Iron Council. Organizational affiliations: the Iron Forge Guild and the Lollipop Guild. Personality: core traits. Grom is a hard-working, honorable, and loyal dwarf. He takes great pride in his craft as a blacksmith and is highly respected among his peers. Backstory: Grom comes from a long line of blacksmiths, and his father was a member of the Iron Forge clan. Grom apprenticed under his father and eventually became a master blacksmith himself. He also served in the military and was a respected member of his clan. Values and beliefs: Grom values his clan and family above all else and believes in hard work, loyalty, and honor. He also has a strong sense of tradition and values, the skills and crafts passed down through generations. Unique voice: Grommy is known for his gravelly voice and quick wit, often cracking jokes or puns in the middle of a conversation. Goals and motivations: Grom's main goal is to continue to hone his craft as a blacksmith and pass on his knowledge and skills to the next generation. He is also motivated to protect and preserve his clan and community. Contradictions: despite his traditional values, Grommy is also open to new ideas and innovation, and is always looking for ways to improve his craft. Physical appearance: Grom is a stout dwarf with a thick bushy red beard, and a head full of wildly curly hair. He has deep-set green eyes and a weathered face from years of working at the forge. He has thick, calloused hands from years of hammering and shaping metal. He is typically dressed in a heavy leather apron and gloves, with a thick, well-worn tunic and leggings. He also carries a hammer at his side, which is his most precious possession. Major accomplishments: Grom is a master blacksmith and a member of the Iron Council. He created the legendary Iron Fist sword, which is said to have magical properties and passed down through generations of the Iron Forge clan. He was instrumental in the defense of Ironhold during the Goblin invasion of 75 years ago. I wonder if that's the same Goblin invasion. Or does this town just constantly get invaded by goblins? Speech style: Grommy speaks in a deep, gravelly voice with a thick dwarven accent. He is direct and to the point, but also has a dry sense of humor and often uses puns and jokes in conversation. He tends to speak more formally when in official settings or when addressing his superiors, but is also approachable and easy to talk to. Wow, he doesn't punctuate his speech? Isn't that interesting? All right, let's, just for fun, tell me the story of Grommy's Induction to the Lollipop Guild. This will be exciting. Grom's induction to the Lollipop Guild was a bit of an unusual story. The Lollipop Guild is a group of dwarves who specialize in creating sweet treats and confections. And it's not the typical organization one would expect a blacksmith like Grom to be a part of. It all started when Grom was approached by a member of the Lollipop Guild who was in need of a special tool for making lollipops. Grom, being the skilled blacksmith that he is, was able to create the tool to the guild member's exact specifications. Impressed by his work, the guild member invited Grom to join the guild as an honorary member. Grom was initially hesitant, as he didn't see how his skills as a blacksmith would be of use to the Lollipop Guild, but the guild member was persistent and eventually convinced Grom to at least attend one of their meetings to see what it was all about. To Grom's surprise, he found that he enjoyed the meetings and the camaraderie of the guild members. He also found that his skills as a blacksmith were actually quite useful in the creation of sweet treats. He was able to create specialized molds and tools for shaping and decorating confections, and he even came up with some unique recipes of his own. In the end, Grom was officially inducted into the Lollipop Guild as an honorary member, and he became a valued member of the organization. He continues to attend meetings and contribute to the Guild's creations. He also enjoys the opportunity to explore a different side of his creativity and share his skills in a new and unique way. That's fantastic. What an interesting organization to plop down into the world and just see what happens. I love that, ChatGPT already has this context for what the Lollipop Guild should be, and it fits so well with what you would have assumed anyway, right? The Lollipop Guild is obviously going to make candy. That's exactly what I wanted. I'm so happy. Um, Here's an interesting thing we can do. Create a prompt for an image AI to show me the Lollipop Guild's signature confection. Again, it's wonderful that I don't have to know how to spell, and that the AI will give me what I want anyway, because I'm terrible at spelling. Create an image of the Iron Fist Lollipop, the signature confection of the Lollipop Guild in the fantasy dwarven city of Ironhold. The confection should be shaped like a miniature version of a dwarven battle hammer, with the intricate detailing and red and gold color scheme. The handle of the hammer should be a stick for holding the lollipop, and the head of the hammer should be made of some kind of sweet candy. The image should be in the front view, with the lollipop being the main focus of the image, and should be set in a dark background. Okay. We're going to copy this section of it. Now I'm going to go over and we're going to get an image of our lollipop. I'm very excited. This is easily some of the most fun. Oh, heyo. And here are our lollipop images. They are not particularly lollipoppy. I'm actually kind of fond of the one in the bottom left, just because it kind of looks like a cake with a dwarfen topper with a little lollipop in his hand, and I really like that whole aesthetic. The one in the top left is also pretty good. It could easily be one of those just really basic suckers that you get in the clear plastic that are just the thin discs. Right? It could easily be something like that that was easily mass producible, something that you would always be getting as a kid. It's the lollipops you get when you go to the doctor when you're a little kid. These other two are very non-traditionally candy looking, you know? I don't know how much I like them. But we could modify that. Uh, we could modify the prompt. Probably get something better. But overall, I'm just kind of a big picture kind of a person, right? Like, we can see the detailing. We can see how well the image generation AI and the ChatGPT AI do with these specific prompts. And they give you some really quality outputs. And we're not putting a ton of effort into getting those quality outputs out. If you wanted to get right, if you were writing a story or if you were running a D&D game or any tabletop RPG game and you needed the Lollipop Guild to exist and you wanted them to have this signature confection, you could spend 20 minutes creating a prompt, getting an output, changing the prompt, getting an output, right? We want the prompt, or we would want the image to look more like a hammer, right? So you could reinforce that in your prompt. We want the stick to be silvery or made of mithril instead of this gold image that we have here, and we could put that in the prompt. We want, there's a million different things that you can do to adjust this prompt in small ways to get more of what you're looking for. But just going through and doing this, letting it guide your imagination a little bit so that you can see better in your mind's eye what you're really looking for is a really fun way just to experience the AI and just to have a little bit of a good time. Again, it takes no time to start generating these prompts. It takes no time to start reading these stories and doing all of this and having fun. And so it's not, a lot of people have gotten bogged down in, what can it do for me? How can I use it to make money? How can I use it to better this or do more of that or whatever? But it's really just fun. And you can just keep having more fun, and it's really easy to have fun, and it's a very high quality fun. Right? I love to read. I know there are lots of people out there who love to read fantasy stories or mystery novels or whatever it is. Or if you really like to learn things, again, you're not going to learn at maybe even a college level. But if you were interested in a topic and you wanted to get the explain like I'm five version on something, you could actually absolutely come to ChatGPT and trust 95% of what it's telling you. And that's better than you would ever get if you were just asking any random person on the street for information. And we trust random people on the street all the time. So it's a wonderful tool for getting things going, right? If you have a story idea that you want to write, this can help you conceptualize some stuff. If you're writing a book, something I've told a number of people on Reddit so far is if you're writing a book and you feel bored with your story, that's totally natural because as the writer, you're spending hundreds or thousands of hours inside your story world, writing just one very basic part of your world during one time period, following a single main character or single group of characters through one one short portion of their life that was important to the history of that world. But there's thousands of years before, thousands of years after that can be discovered and explored that don't ever have to make it to a printed page. But if you're bored with a story that you're writing, input a little data into ChatGPT and take a little time for yourself to go explore parts of that story that nobody else will even ever read about. Nobody else will even know about. It's just an opportunity for you to see how your character's story affects other people, or see how the history of your world might have affected and changed the way your characters are interacting with the world now. It doesn't have to be precise. It doesn't have to be some 100% canon thing. It's an opportunity for you to fall in love with your world again. And ChatGPT or any other text generating AI like this can totally do that for you. It's a break. It's a good time. It lets you live in your world a little bit more. If you're going to spend an exceptional amount of time living in your world, then you have to get an exceptional amount of detail out of your world to get the same experience that a normal person who's just reading your book would get. And so this is a great source of that. Now let's move on to some different characters. Let's do some human characters because I think that ChatGPT will be a little more diverse in how it describes human characters, because human characters in basically every fantasy setting are um, are sort of the jack of all trade characters, and so you're not getting that very specific, all dwarves are honor bound and loyal and adhere to duty and blah 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 blah. So here we have a human city that is going to be named Arctos. Their leader is King Thorn. Population is 100,000, much larger than the dwarven city we've been playing in so far. Important clans is the Crimson Blades, the Moonwalkers, and the Stormbringers. Actually, we could have taken important clans out because clans is more of a dwarf thing, but whatever, we'll stick with it. Important organizations is the Mages Guild, the Merchants Guild, the Knights Order. Worship deities is the Triad Zeros, god of wisdom, Zara, goddess of fertility and growth, and Zephyr, god of the wind. Notable businesses, the Golden Anvil, blacksmith and armorer, the Starry Rose, inn and tavern, and the Emerald Apothecary, herbalist and alchemist. I really like all three of those. If I was running a tabletop RPG, I would absolutely just drop those into my city. Historical figures, we've got Queen Aelwyn, who united the city's clans under one rule, Grand Mage Eldrin, who defended the city from a powerful demon invasion, and Captain Galen, who led the city's navy to victory in a decisive sea battle. So this is obviously a seaside city. Historical moments, the unification of the city's clans, the demon invasion, and the city's successful defense, the naval victory that secured Arctos' position as a major trading power. Let's do show me the character of Grand Mage Eldrin. I'm just going to do that. I'm not going to put in the format that I normally put in because I'm curious to see what its default formatting is going to look like. Grand Mage Eldrin was a powerful wizard and leader of the Mages Guild in the city of Arctos. He was known for his wisdom, intelligence, and strategic thinking. He was a master of many forms of magic and had a deep understanding of arcane lore. He was respected and revered by the citizens of Arctos for his bravery and leadership during the demon invasion. He was able to rally the city's defenses and lead them in a successful defense of the city using powerful magic and clever tactics. Eldrin's leadership and powerful magic proved to be a decisive factor in the city's victory, and he was hailed as a hero by the people of Arctos. He later became an advisor to the king and continued to play an important role in the city's politics and defense. Interesting. I definitely like my formatting better. I like seeing more description about the characters just because people interest me. And even though these are totally fake people, I like to imagine how they fit into the world. So, I think I'm going to actually go ahead and change this. And absolutely. Just drop my little thing in there. See how it changes this. This is the other thing. Because using ChatGPT is very similar to coding, because you're giving the computer a series of instructions, right? And it's got its default instructions, but you're still describing to it how you want its outputs to be structured and what information is important and what the context of that information is. And as you do that, you get more and more specific. Oh, I accidentally made it the Lollipop Guild. Okay, stop. We don't want the Lollipop Guild again. Whoopsie. But it's very much like coding, and in another way, it's like coding, is that you can reuse a lot of what you do. So if you generate an interesting prompt, or if you generate a format that you like your characters to be developed in, then save that somewhere, right? I use a Notion page that I save all of this stuff on, and then after a session of working with the bot or after one of my streams or something, then I go back and I reorganize that Notion page so that I can keep all of that organized. And then when I need it again, it's right there at my fingertips. I can bring that back in. If we get an update to the AI and it deletes all of our chats like it did last time, then I'm not going to lose all of those little quote unquote code snippets that I've generated in the past, so I can get right back into doing whatever it is I'm doing. So we've got Grand Mage Eldrin, who is a human. He's unknown age, but appears to be in his late 60s. I like that because he's a mage. Obviously, you don't really know how old he is. He's a lawful good alignment. His occupation is Grand Mage of the Mages Guild, and his organizational affiliations are just the Mages Guild. So this is one of the first times that we've seen a character that it didn't try to apply every organization to, and I'm very happy about that. Yeah, rippled chats indeed. And that's just one of the things you're going to have to deal with if you're going to use a beta version of a program like this that's completely housed online. You need to start backing things up, right? You've got to save. You've got to take on that responsibility because it's got to be an expectation for you that with a beta project like this, that is as large as it is and as complex as it is, and because saving these chats is obviously, a tertiary um, of tertiary importance for the project, because really you're just trying to get as much of a human-like response as you can, and so saving these old chats and not moving forward is just not going to be important, obviously, to OpenAI. You absolutely need to be saving things that you think will be useful to you in the future. It's very important. So it's changed up how it spread things out. It's gone for a more bulleted representation this time, which is interesting. So his personality core traits are wise, powerful, and dedicated. Backstory is Eldrin was orphaned at a young age and taken in by the Mages Guild, where he quickly showed a natural aptitude for magic. He rose through the ranks, becoming one of the most powerful and respected members of the guild. This is another thing that the AI does a lot, is when it's describing characters to you, they often do things quickly. Um, and it gets a little bit old, and I would like to see more variation in how it was saying the word quickly, right? Just some synonyms or Maybe if everybody is always achieving everything quickly, you just don't say it, right? It can be something that we naturally know. And that's absolutely going to be true of characters who are of any importance to the history of your world, right? They're always going to have exceeded expectations and been above the average. So they're going to do things more quickly. They're going to do them better. They're going to do them with more aptitude. Um, so while it is a repetitive thing, it's not necessarily wrong for it to be constantly using that same. Right, exactly. Adventurers just do things quickly. And it's not just adventurers. I mean, this guy isn't technically an adventurer. He's the leader of the Mages Guild. He's the Grand Mage of the Mages Guild. And the reason he's not just any old mage of the Mages Guild is because any old mage of the Mages Guild is friggin' boring. Right? They didn't lead the defense of against the demons, or was it demons that they said they got attacked by? Yeah, the demon invasion, right? They didn't lead the defense against the demon invasion. They just were there at the defense of the demon invasion. And so talking about them is not important. We want to talk about the Grand Mage because he led that. And so you're always going to get these characters that are exceptional in very similar ways because there are only so many ways to be exceptional and to achieve that exceptional status. Um, so one of the things I've started doing is when I first started working with the I was creating a lot of elven characters, and every elven character that it was creating had an aristocratic and regal appearance. And it kept using those same words, aristocratic and regal, aristocratic and regal, aristocratic and regal, every time. And I got tired of it because yes, I understand that elves look aristocratic and regal or whatever, but I don't want it to always be that way. And so I told it, I was like, create an elf, don't use this. And it came up with a whole new set of adjectives for the way the character looked. And ultimately it was saying the same thing, but it said it in a different way. And then eventually I got tired of reading the same typical features and the same personalities. It was giving every character the same personality, very much like it did the dwarves. And so we created a list of things that all elves had in common. And then I told it to create me an elf and not use any of these common attributes in its description. Right? If it's something that every elf shares, don't tell me about it. Because just like the AI has that base default context, your readers are going to have that same base default context, and you're going to have that same base default context. So maybe it tells you that all elves look aristocratic and regal the first time it tells you about an elf, and then you tell it to stop doing it, and then you just know, and now it's still going to want to fill in that space. It's still going to want to tell you something. So it's going to express its creativity a little more and give you a deeper view of what that character looks like, because now you get that default plus you get this other context that it's giving you. So he was orphaned. Values and beliefs. Eldrin believes in the power of knowledge and education, and is a strong advocate for the preservation of ancient texts and magical artifacts. He also values duty and responsibility and takes his role as a city's protector very seriously. Unique voice. Eldrin speaks in a measured and deliberate tone, choosing his words carefully. He is known for his eloquence and wisdom, often dispensing advice to those who seek his counsel. Goals and motivations. Eldrin's ultimate goal is to ensure the safety and prosperity of Arctos and its people. He is deeply committed to the Mages Guild and works tirelessly to further its goals. Contradictions. Despite his powerful abilities and status, Eldrin is humble and selfless, always putting the needs of others before his own. Physical appearance, the occupation and lifestyle. As a powerful mage, Eldrin exudes an air of authority and command. He is tall and thin with sharp features and piercing eyes. This is another one it uses a lot, is piercing eyes. But again, that's one of those, it talks about being commanding. It talks about being a leader. And again, leadership qualities are something that your important characters are going to have. And so they're going to have piercing eyes. They're going to have, uh, what are some other ways to describe eyes that would, I don't know. Again, I'm not a writer. I'm not that creative. But you're going to get a lot of that repetition because there's only so many ways you can describe eyes. Unique features: Eldrin has a long white beard and a distinctive scar above his left eyebrow, which he received during a battle with a powerful demon. Personality: Eldrin's appearance reflects his wisdom and intelligence. He often wears elegant robes adorned with intricate magical symbols. Clothing and accessories: he wears a long dark blue robe with the symbol of the Mages Guild embroidered on the chest. He carries a staff with a glowing crystal on top. And major accomplishments: defeated a powerful demon that threatened the city and saved the lives of thousands of citizens. Discovered and translated an ancient magical text, which has become a fundamental reference for the Mages Guild, and led the Mages Guild to become one of the most powerful and respected organizations in the city. Speech style: Eldrin speaks in a calm and measured tone with a hint of authority. He uses formal language and often employs metaphors and analogies to make his points. He is known for his eloquence and wisdom and is often sought out for advice. So the way it set up the physical appearance this time is going to be a little bit difficult to use to generate the image, and I want to generate the image of Eldrin. So we're going to ask it to give us another physical appearance, but create a prompt for an image AI to show us what Eldrin looks like. I don't know why I capitalized looks, but I did, and it doesn't matter. The AI totally gets it. Please generate an image. Okay. So it's going to say, please generate an image of the Grand Mage Eldrin. We're going to cut that part out, but he is a powerful and wise human mage with a long white beard, a scar above his left eyebrow, and dressed in elegant dark blue robes adorned with intricate magical symbols, carrying a staff with a glowing crystal on top. He should have an air of authority and command, with sharp features and piercing eyes reflecting his wisdom and intelligence. Now, I like that it uses words that don't necessarily describe a physical feature, right? He's talking about uh, reflecting his wisdom and intelligence in his eyes. Now, because these AI models are being trained to understand more of what people are trying to say, that is going to give a significant amount of context to the AI image creator about what we're really looking for. And so while these things aren't necessarily standardized, right? Wise and intelligent looks are not something that everybody just knows to be the same way. It is going to give more context to the AI, and the AI is going to generate something from that. And that something could very well be really interesting. We're going to find out. All right. And here's what we got. These all came out very, very similar. And I like them. Probably like this staff on the top right the most. I like the robe in the top left the most. And I actually like this character's face the most. It looks more devious to me, I think. All right. tell me the story of the first time Eldrin cast a spell. This should be an interesting story. When Eldrin was just a young orphan boy, he was taken in by the Mages Guild in Arctos. From a young age, he showed a natural aptitude for magic, and the Guild's elders recognized his potential. They took him under their wing and began to train him in the ways of magic. Eldrin was eager to learn and quickly picked up the basics of spellcasting. He spent hours studying ancient texts and practicing incantations under the watchful eyes of his mentors, but despite his progress, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. One day, while working on a particularly difficult spell, Eldrin closed his eyes and reached deep within himself. Suddenly he felt a spark of energy within him, a feeling he'd never experienced before. Without hesitation, he channeled that energy into a spell, and with a flash of light the spell came to life. Eldrin opened his eyes to find that he had successfully cast his first spell. The guild elders were amazed and proud of his achievement, and from that day forward Eldrin was considered a true mage. From then on, Eldrin's abilities continued to grow, and he quickly rose through the ranks of the Mages Guild. He became one of the most powerful and respected members of the guild, and ultimately the Grand Mage of the Mages Guild. His first spell was not just a spell, but a beginning of his journey of becoming one of the most powerful mages in the city, who protected and safeguarded the city and its people. It was a fairly mundane story, but if we got some additional context about what the spell was and what the effect of that spell was, I would have really enjoyed that story. And we could, of course, tell the AI to do that for us, and it absolutely would. I am still, after just hours and hours of working with the AI, completely blown away. And now working with some of these image AIs in conjunction with ChatGPT, I'm just totally blown away with the creative ability of these AIs and how much more it raises the baseline. Right? I'm never going to draw any of these images. It's just not possible. I can draw some squiggly stick figures, and that's absolutely the extent of my creative ability. And it's absolutely true that in my mind, I could totally picture all of these characters, right? Reading these stories, reading these character descriptions, whenever I read books, I have no problem imagining the characters in my mind's eye. But not everybody has it that easy. Not everybody sees those things as clearly as I do. And so having the ability to plug a couple of just everyday words into an AI and get back out an image of what you're reading about or an image of what you're thinking about is a really, really great tool for not just the creators of content, but also the consumers of that content. I mean, for example, if you really, really like a book series, we talked a little bit about being able to experience more of the world of your book if you were a writer, but the same is true if you're a reader. If you really enjoy a series of books and you just want to go explore that world a little bit in some willy-nilly uncanon way, we have a lot of fan fiction and stuff like that that gets written about a lot of different stories, but the amount of time that goes into that is a lot. And maybe you don't agree with the direction that a fan fiction writer is taking the story or taking the characters or taking the world. You can direct, right? This AI is a fan fiction writer that you get to tell what direction to go in. And then you can just read those stories all for yourself. Take the world in whatever direction you want, use the established universe, especially because a lot of those books already exist in the training data for ChatGPT. It would be even easier than what we're doing now, where we're creating completely new worlds and then exploring those. If you wanted to explore an existing world, the default context of the AI is going to be much, much better and able to withstand for a much longer period of time through your story that you're writing. Because that default context, right now we're getting all of our context about the city of Arctos from this chat. And so as soon as we get far enough down in this chat that the AI forgets that default context or the context that we've given it when we created the city, then it loses the Crimson Blades, the Moonwalkers, the Stormbringers. It loses the Mages Guild. It doesn't remember that that exists. And so at some point during your story, those things are no longer canon in your world because the AI has forgotten them. But for established literature, that's not going to be the case because that's part of its training data. So while it might forget some of the special context you've given it as the story that you're creating is developed, it won't forget the base context of that story. And so it's going to be much more fluid. For example, let's take a world, The Midsummer Night's Dream by Shakespeare, and let's tell the story of Titania and Oberon from a midsummer night's dream after the events of the book, or after the events of the play. In Shakespeare's play, A Midsummer Night's Dream, Titania and Oberon are the queen and king of the fairies. They are depicted as being in a feud over a changeling boy, but ultimately reconcile and attend the wedding of the Duke of Athens and the Queen of the Amazons. After the events of the play, it is not specified what happens to Titania and Oberon. However, it is likely that they return to their roles as rulers of the fairy kingdom, possibly with the changeling boy in tow. Some interpretations suggest that the play is a dream, and that the events that occur may not have actually happened, so the story does not continue after the end of the play. Okay, it doesn't want to tell us, so let's make up a new story ourselves. After the events of A Midsummer Night's Dream, Titania and Oberon continue to rule the fairy kingdom together, but with a newfound appreciation for each other. The changeling boy, whom they had both fought over, becomes a beloved member of their court. The boy's presence serves as a reminder of the foolishness of their past feud and the importance of compromise and understanding. As rulers, Titania and Oberon strive to create a peaceful and harmonious kingdom, using their magical powers to promote love and fertility in the natural world. They also work to improve relations between the fairy kingdom and the mortal world, often intervening to help humans in need. One day, a mortal king and queen come to the fairy kingdom seeking help in ending a long-standing war between their kingdom and a neighboring kingdom. Titania and Oberon use their power to bring the leaders of the warring kingdoms together and help them come to a peaceful resolution. Word of the fairy king and queen's diplomacy and peacemaking spreads far and wide, and they become known as the fairy peacemakers. People from all over the world seek their help in resolving conflicts, and Titania and Oberon become respected and revered figures in both the fairy and mortal worlds. Titania and Oberon continue to rule the fairy kingdom together for many years, with the changeling boy at their side, always remembering the lesson they learned about the importance of love and understanding. So I don't know if anybody is familiar with the story of A Midsummer Night's Dream, but it's one of my favorite Shakespeare plays. We actually performed it when I was in high school, and so I've always had a soft spot for it. But again, having the opportunity to explore stuff that's outside of what you already know about the story, using the context that the story provides, is just another really fun little thing you can do with the AI. And maybe you share it with other people, and maybe you don't. Maybe it's just for you. Maybe it's just a fun pastime. It doesn't really matter because it's, again, so quick. You just think, what would I be interested in reading about today? And then you type a little bit in, and blammo, instant story. What else could we do that's fun? Anybody else have any ideas for some story stuffs? I was thinking while it's generating, just adding a character arc field would maybe be handy to a writer. That's interesting. That was kind of what I was going for with the um, major accomplishments. Primarily because I was just looking for things to input for it to tell me a story about. But trying to narrow it more down to, the specific growth of that character instead of just small points in time could be interesting. Especially if you were constructing a larger world concept and then created your characters. Again, with ChatGPT, it's very important to start from a macro area and then come down into the micro, because your world context is going to affect your character much more than your character context is going to affect your world. So if, like you were saying, you wanted to have a character arc field, having all of your world and region and local context down before you created your character would give the AI a lot more information when developing that arc in, places they might go, people they might interact with, um, the societal structures that would have developed their personalities and their growth over time. All of that stuff is very important context for that. So it's sort of inverse to what you would normally do if you were creating a character or a world. Normally they say to start local and then expand, because, especially, I mean, if you're doing a tabletop RPG or something like that, you only need to make as much of the world as is going to be lived in at a given time. And it's sort of the opposite with the AI assistant. This has been exceptionally fun. I want to go back to our rune magic system that we've made. One of the most fun things I've had so far is when we first created this rune magic system in, I don't know, like the first stream, we were having it pump out spells and then tell us the story of the person who created the spell. And it was coming up with some really, really intriguing stories when it was doing that. This is our rune system, but it doesn't have our runes in it. Here's our rune system with our runes. Okay. And we've got... Excellent. So we created a rune magic system. And these are the rules up here. I'm probably not going to stick on them for really long, but basically it's just a system where the runes are written and then there's an activation spell given, or an activation incantation given, and then we made it create 26 runes for us. And then this is our prompt for how we create the spells. The relative strength required talks about the physical strength required by the person casting the spell. And then the incantation is longer or shorter depending on how powerful the spell is. And it actually does a really interesting job of balancing the spells based on their effects, not necessarily just the number of runes. The AI does a really, really good job with that. So let's regenerate the response. Let's get a new spell. Oh, these ones are being created by the Runic Brotherhood. Okay. So the Runic Brotherhood was a group that we created for a city that we made. And they specifically create spells that help tradespeople. And so just that little bit of context that we created for them um, has given us a ton of spells that we just weren't getting before we created the Runic Brotherhood, right? All the spells we were getting before that were about movement, shadow step and stuff like that, and about combat and attack. And then as soon as we created this Runic Brotherhood and dumped that context in, it gave us tons of really great spells just specifically for the trades. It doesn't look like it's going to print anything here, and I actually want to change. I'd like to go back to some of the combat stuff. Here's our list. And then we've added the Runic Brotherhood. We don't want to do that. So here's where we just created normal spells. So let's regenerate that response. Come on. You can do it. I believe. We may be getting to a point in the day where there's just too much going on with ChatGPT. We might have just some problem continuing to mess around. I am happy that we haven't hit the rate limiter today. We definitely were not being careful about that. I mean, we were reading everything that it was saying, but we weren't taking breaks much more than just reading what it was saying. So we'll just. Whoop. Oh, it's not gonna. Okay, we're gonna have to refresh. Then we're gonna come back down. Go back. Submit and save. We're going to try this last thing. Here we go. All right. So our spell name is going to be Healing Touch. It is only going to use the rune Life, and it is a 20 relative strength. So you're going to see that it's going to give it a much smaller incantation for activation, which is Vitae Sanare, or Sanare. I don't really know. I assume it's Sanare. But it just means heal life. I would probably cut the Latin and just use heal life because I don't like feeling dumb and I don't read Latin. The spell effect is heals the target's injuries and remove any negative status effects. So these spells tend to be created with a tabletop RPG in mind, but that's why we have the flavor text. I love flavor text. The Rune Master traces the symbol for life, for the life rune on the wounded individual, and they speak the incantation Vitae Sanare. The wounds begin to mend, and the person's vitality is restored. The spell is relatively simple, but powerful enough to heal most injuries and restore the target's strength. But this is where I was having the most fun. I want the AI to tell me the story of the Rune Master who created this spell. And then it's just going to blurt out this wonderful story. The Rune Master who created the spell Healing Touch was a kind and compassionate individual who had always been drawn to the study of the healing arts. They had spent many years studying the runes and had developed a deep understanding of the life rune in particular. The Rune Master had always been fascinated. Okay, we're going to stop it right here. We're going to regenerate this. Name the character. Do not use names from popular literature. Okay, now we're going to do it again. The story of the Rune Master who created the spell Healing Touch is one of great dedication and perseverance. The Rune Master's name was Alara. Alara is a character it's actually given me before. A gifted mage who had always been drawn to the study of runes and their healing properties. She began her training as a rune master at a young age and spent many years studying under the tutelage of some of the most skilled and knowledgeable rune masters in the land. As she grew older and more skilled, Lara became increasingly interested in the idea of using runes to heal injuries and illnesses. She spent countless hours researching and experimenting with different combinations of runes, and soon began to develop a reputation as one of the most talented healers in the land. Despite her many successes, Alara's journey was not without its challenges. Many of the other rune masters she studied under were skeptical of her ideas, and some even went as far as to mock her for her unorthodox methods. But Alara refused to be discouraged, and she continued to pursue her research with a singular determination. It was during this time that Alara discovered the Life Rune, and she immediately recognized its potential as a powerful healing tool. She spent months studying the rune and experimenting with different incantations and techniques, and finally, she succeeded in creating the spell Healing Touch. The spell was an instant success, and Alara's reputation as a skilled and dedicated rune master was solidified. She spent the rest of her days teaching and spreading the knowledge of her spell to other rune masters, and it was said that her spell saved countless lives and helped many people to recover from injuries and illnesses that were once thought to be incurable. Alara's legacy lived on, and the spell she created became one of the most widely used and respected in the rune master community. Did she learn quickly? Gifted mage who's always been. I don't think it said she learned quickly. This was actually an extremely unique story in that it wasn't entirely positive. Most of the stories it gives, unless you specifically give a negative attribute to the character, are always just all positive. They just always do everything all the time super right, and everything always goes right for them. But here it actually gives a whole paragraph about how she was mocked by other rune masters. Yeah, I mean, it actually might have avoided the word quick this time. But I mean, it even gave us some negative stuff, some negative context here. So, and I don't really know why it is, but the stories that I've gotten from having it tell me about the rune masters who created the spells have been hands down the best stories that I've gotten out of the AI so far. And I think it's because there's so much context for the AI in the runes themselves, right? The runes are all proper nouns, and it gives these great examples of what the runes are, right? Death represents the element of death, endings, and rebirths associated with release and transformation. So there's a ton of stuff going on in there, and as it adds runes together and changes those meanings, it ends up with really, really creative stories because of it. I've really enjoyed these stories. But I really just I wanted to end on a really quality story here. That's probably going to be all for today. It's been about 2 hours. Jay, I want to thank you for coming by and contributing here. That Lollipop Guild thing was hilarious. So much fun came out of that. I don't know if I'll be back on tomorrow, but definitely I'll be back on shortly, probably tomorrow. And we'll do a little more world building on the world that we've been actually creating and see if we can't get some additional context there, because I'd really like to see what the AI is capable of when you really build something out and find all of its little idiosyncrasies and start telling it specific ways to overcome those things. I think we're going to get an incredibly unique story out of it, and I'm really, really looking forward to that over the next couple of weeks. So yeah, thanks again. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and have a great day.